to the Nevada County campus of Sierra College as the unceded homelands of the Nisenan people. For countless generations, the Nisenan have carried out their responsibility as stewards of this place originally known as DASPA. Sierra College commits to an ongoing relationship with the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe and their future generations who are an integral part of the Sierra College community. Good morning, I'm Judy East and I'm chair of the Nevada County Council of Sierra College Foundation, and we are honored to sponsor these community forums. Just to tell you a little bit about the foundation is designed to support students and programs on the Nevada County campus and all of the other campuses. Our council particularly focuses on Nevada County. We put about $20,000 each year into students and programs. Among our projects have been an emergency fund. If a student can't get a tire, they can't get to school. So we have a one-time emergency fund that will pay for those kinds of emergencies that might prevent a student to come to school. The other project we have is our food pantry. Many of our students are food insecure, and although we link them up with the food bank, many times they come to school hungry. So we have a food pantry in our counseling center, and any student can come and get that. We also provide some vouchers for lunches for those students. In addition, the foundation is responsible for scholarships, and we're going to get ready for that process very soon. The council was able to secure 5 Osher scholarships, that's $1,000 a year in perpetuity for Nevada County students only. In addition, we've sponsored the lecture series. You can look out in the lobby. We have our faculty art show right now. We do sponsor the student art show. We also are getting involved in an alumni association, so if you've ever attended Sierra College, there's information on the table if you want to join the alumni association. In addition, we have a list going around. If you've already signed up for the community forums, please don't sign it again, but if you're interested in being on our mailing list so you can find out about the community forums, please sign this list. I'm going to send it around right now. Thank you. And now to our program.
Thank you, Judy. Good morning. I'm Terry McAteer. I'm the retired County Superintendent of Schools, and I'm on the Community Forum Foundation here, and it's nice to have you all here. Thank you very much for coming out on an interesting topic. I will note that also on the board here was what we're having next month, so I'll get that out of the way, which is we're having Jennifer Hansen, who's the director and general manager for NID, to come talk about NID's infrastructure, talk about the fiasco that they've recently had and still have with PG&E. And so I hope you'll come and learn about your water and your water system and how we're going to pay for it in the future. And so it should be an interesting hour together with Ms. Hansen. Today's topics pretty straightforward. 79% in a recent Gallup poll said that they were concerned about political violence on Election Day or thereafter. And so we wanted to be able to discuss that topic in relationship to Nevada County. So it's so delighted to have our county clerk recorder and our sheriff with us today to chat about ensuring that we have a safe election and a peaceful transfer of power, at least in this county. So Natalie, let's begin with you and say how is the election going thus far with your staff and all?
Hi, everybody. This is working, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, the election's going well. Thank you all who have already voted. If you have not voted yet, early voting is happening right now. We have a new elections data dashboard that is on our website. It's under the election information. And we managed to process so far over 4,000 ballots. So yeah, keep them coming. I think if you already know how you want to vote, why not do it now? Of course, you can vote on election day, just don't vote after election day. But everything is going smoothly so far. All of our plans are in place, and I think everyone's really happy with the way things are going right now.
Great. So Natalie, tell us, last time we chatted, you were concerned about getting enough workers and volunteers, and a lot had retired, a lot for the fact that they were feeling uncomfortable about working in the polls or in the elections office. How is your staffing for this election?
We are fully staffed.
Great, great. And have you worked with the sheriff at all regarding any concerns of staff intimidation or anything in that regard?
We've done a lot of planning for this election, as we do for every election, but this one in particular because there's such high interest. It's a general presidential election, and I'm glad to say that we've partnered not only with Sheriff's Office, but all of our municipal law enforcement, state and federal law enforcement partners on planning for contingencies. Unfortunately, we do have to plan for, what happens in case there is an incident, like at a voting location or at our office. We've also been briefed quite a bit by FBI and, our other state partners on what to, sort of look out for based on what's happening in other states and maybe even in other counties. So, yeah, we've really done our homework.
So let's talk about that a little bit more because, in my lifetime and everyone else's lifetime, a safe and peaceful election was a given. And now, unfortunately, we're having to have this conversation, which we've never had in America before. And so what is the FBI telling you in terms of your staff and precautions that might need to be taken?
So just to be clear, what the FBI and other law enforcement partners are telling us, they're telling to everyone in all counties. So it's not like there's anything specific to Nevada County. But what we have seen in other states and in some other counties are people who have an intent to maybe mess with the drop boxes. One thing that has sort of made news is the sending of letters with potentially harmful substances.
You've already had that experience.
We have not, but there were letters that were bound for Sacramento elections and Los Angeles elections. Those were intercepted by the United States Postal Inspection Service. Secretary of State last month had a suspicious letter that contained a substance. Fortunately, it was just unbleached flour, but it still sort of heightens the sort of the threat level. It sort of makes people fearful. That's the intent. But we have protocols and procedures.
Currently, isn't the Sheriff's Department looking at your mail or something as it comes in, or is there some preview? If you get a letter directly to you, is there somebody who looks at it beforehand, or?
Well, our staff looks at it. We have a mail receiving room in the county, and we've made them, sort of very aware of what's happening and all the alerts, and what we're recommending at the very least is people wear gloves when they open the mail. Sometimes I do get letters, personally addressed to me, and it's someone who wants to update their mailing address, but they make a big deal that it has to be addressed to me.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So back to what you're hearing from other clerk recorders around the West, Nevada, California, etc. What's out there? What are they concerned about?
They are concerned about disruptions to the voting process. They're concerned about the safety of election workers. I mean, I think that's, sort of top of mind for people. But there have been, sort of incidents where I think last election in Los Angeles County, someone set fire to a drop box, and there were some ballots in there. So, the law enforcement, sort of investigated that right away. There could be artificial intelligence postings on social media that show images that are, not real, that may try to persuade voters into thinking that something bad is happening when something is not.
So
Stuff like that.
I've heard that there's going to be poll watchers, whatever a poll watcher is, at most polls around the country, of people ensuring that things are going well, but they're from one political party. Are you aware of poll watchers coming to your polls to see that everything is going legitimately?
We have election observers. They're called different things in different states. Some states call them poll watchers. We call them observers. And yeah, everyone is welcome to observe the election. We do have rules you have to follow as an election observer. Like, you need to sign in. You need to identify yourself as an observer, but we don't ask you about your political party. There are some states that require political parity for observation. We don't. As long as you follow our rules and don't disrupt the elections process, we welcome observers and we want people to observe. And I think that's actually a strength of our democracy, that we are transparent about what we do.
Well, you're so transparent that you have video cameras throughout your office.
For sure.
Live video cameras that you can see what Natalie's doing in her office at most any time.
Oh, not what I'm doing in my office,
Okay.
but I mean, what a boring feed that would be. It's just me clickety-clack at my computer. But we do have live cameras in our ballot room and in the ballot processing area, and where we're doing things like updating voter files and sort of stuff like that, so people can see that we are following a process. For example, no one's alone with a ballot. We have at least 2 people with ballots that, from the time we receive that ballot to the time that it's put through the voting equipment and calculated, that, that process has, rules and procedures that we follow. So, yeah.
Just the other day, I just thought I'd love to get your comment to this, that former President Trump was down in California, and he said, if that's being elections in California, had an honest, this is quote, if they had an honest election in California, I think I'd win it in a landslide, I really do, which is implying that there's some kind of nefarious stuff going on in California. Is there anything nefarious going on in the 58 counties in this state?
I am happy to report that we have free and fair elections here.
Good. That's worth clapping about. So let's turn to our lovely sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff Moon, for being here. Really appreciate it. So tell us, what precautions, if any, are you taking, or are you concerned about relative to the upcoming election?
Well, I think it started off with saying that the concerns are because of the concerns of our community. I don't think there's any concerns from inside law enforcement. Definitely from inside my office. We work very well with our law enforcement partners here in the county, along with our state partners and along with our federal partners. But when you have constituents and members of our community that are fearful, that raises the concerns for us on how can we provide that assurance that, one, we are aware of the fact that there is some fear out there, and then how do we address that with whether it's our presence. Sometimes it's the lack of our presence. Some people do get more anxiety when they see law enforcement. So it's a balance of really trying to recognize and looking at how we constantly reevaluate our presence where we're at. And part of the election laws is trying to make sure that people don't feel intimidated when you're at either your polling place or where you're dropping your ballots. So wanting to make sure that it's not, if we're there, it's because we're there for legitimate reasons called for by election staff, not because we're just hanging out and wanting to see who's showing up to vote and who's not. I think that was part of the reason why some of those laws were enacted. But when we look at it internally, the amount of preparedness that we're doing on this election, and we've done it in the past on other elections, but again, we have to constantly look at what does our community, what are they feeling, and how can we help assure people that we are there in case we're needed, and that we're going to be able to act appropriately. Part of that is a lot of meetings, a lot of sitting down and building relationship prior to, not only with our election staff, but again, locally within the Nevada County region. We have 3 amazing police agencies that work within the cities of their jurisdiction, and we talk quite a bit with them. We've also had a lot of briefings, again, from the FBI. We have a new special agent in charge of our Roseville office, Sid Patel. I talk with him not just about election security, but I talk with them. We talk about investigations all the time because sometimes our investigations, our criminal investigations, do lead out of our county, lead out of our state, and sometimes lead out of our country. So having those relationships on the front end, listening to maybe some of their briefings on if they've heard anything specific about Nevada County. We talk a lot. There is nothing on the radar for Nevada County. That doesn't mean we just go to sleep at night and say we're all good here. We definitely have been in that preparation arena. I find it very similar to the emergency evacuations. Back when I started 30 years ago, we would wait for the fire department to call us when they needed us. Now it seems like if there's a fire, we immediately roll to that fire and we ask, do you need us? What can we do to help? So it's about being more in that preparedness arena instead of reactive and just sitting back on your laurels and waiting for something to happen and then say, oh, we didn't think that was going to happen. So again, it's a balance because you don't also want to go extremely overboard and recognizing we have over 950 square miles of county to cover for all crime issues that happen in our county. We have limited staff, so we also, like I said, temper that with making sure that on any given day, our community feels safe in our county.
So it's safe to say that you know, 20 years ago, this conversation, for the most part, didn't happen. But we're having it happen now. And what is the conversation, and what type of training or meetings are you having regarding election interference or post-election interference?
Yeah, I think in the 2020 election, I think a lot of people saw what happened in Washington, and it does create a concern in your local community on what the potential for that type of violence. So again, we literally look at it day to day. We of course see that the election is coming. Our state legislators 2 years ago put the sheriff and the DA on the presidential cycle. So typically I would be running in this next election, not this election, but the next election in 2026. But our state legislators moved all of us to the presidential cycle. They tried to get the clerk recorders on the presidential cycle until the clerk recorders said, "We're going to be a little busy with an election. I don't think we should have to run for our own seats during the same time as a presidential election." So we're constantly talking at the state level. I just flew in to be able to make sure that I was here today from a state meeting with 57 of the other 58 sheriffs. And we talk regularly about what's happening in all of our local communities. And again, we talk with the FBI, with Sid. Natalie and her staff had some of the FBI staff come up just last week. We sat down with Chief Dan Foss, who's here today from Nevada City Police Department. Good to see you, Dan. The Chief of Grass Valley Police Department, Alex Galmagard, the Chief of Truckee, Danny Renfro, and several of our staff in that meeting. And we talk about what are the election laws that we need to be aware of, if anything's changed. Anytime there is a federal candidate on that ballot, then the federal agencies are the true jurisdictional for those investigations. But they understand we're the front line. We're going to be getting some of those reports. We're going to be responding to maybe some of those incidences, and then we work in collaboration once we get a scene safe for our federal partners to come in. We work definitely with our state partners at the State Department of Justice. Rob Bonta is our Attorney General. He has a brand new Chief of Law Enforcement, Stephen Woolery, who's a fantastic guy. I talk with him regularly at our state meetings. And again, they send out those bulletins for us to be aware. And at the federal level and at the state level, they've said they have no clear, viable threats for anyone that we should be specific of. Just want to make sure everyone is prepared.
So what does being prepared, what are you telling your staff out there on election day and thereafter? What are there more staff involved, or is nobody going on vacation at that time, or what? Tell us what preventative measures you're taking.
We're not quite there yet, so if my staff are listening, right? We're not there yet because of no viable threat. But what we do is we strategically make sure that we have staff available for all of the polling places that are in the county. The polling places that are within this, and the drop boxes that are within the city jurisdictions, that would be a city response if there was a call for service or a need. But again, we also want to make sure that we're there for the security of our election staff, and that we know where all of the spots are for the drop boxes and the polling places. Definitely ensuring that we have available staff at the Root Center, since that is the main location for a lot of folks for dropping their ballots. And again, we work with our federal partners. We have what's called a fusion center. And when I first heard about fusion centers, I was like, that sounds kind of like chemistry. And I did go to Sierra College, but I never took chemistry. But at the Fusion Center, everyone sends in tips across the country. And in our region, we're in the Sacramento region, so our agency for the Fusion Center is called the RTAC. We love acronyms, but it's a regional center where all the tips from anyone, from law enforcement, from community members can go in. They analyze those tips, and then they send out bulletins based on that information. One of the gentlemen from the Fusion Center was also up in our county for our last training, wanted to make sure that he said we have no tips for anything for Nevada County. So again, you can't just say we just don't have anything, because that doesn't help your levels of your anxiety and your fear. But what the preparedness that we do is we have constant conversations with our teams on understanding that that's the fear that some people have, recognizing that we provide service to everyone. It doesn't matter what party you belong to, right? Everyone should feel safe in Nevada County. And we have those conversations all the time in our briefing rooms for all of our staff, and making sure that our command staff are talking with their supervisors, the supervisors talking with their staff. So it's a constant confirmation of that.
So because of January 6th, we learned about groups like Proud Boys and 3%ers and all. Are you aware of, are you kept aware, are you knowledgeable of people who are members of those groups in this community?
Well, the first of all, the freedom of speech, lots of people will gather, lots of people will have their discussions. It's whether or not they bring any type of true threat of violence or act of violence that comes forward. And we have lots of folks get on my calendar to come in to tell us about what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing as it comes to my authority of being the sheriff. A lot of that came through COVID, but as far as a group that we have our eye on, no.
Okay.
There is lots of folks, again, everybody has their own beliefs and their perspectives, whether it's political, religious, all those different things. But the only way we get involved is if we have a report of crime or a report of theft, and then we'll start investigating those things. So we need the public to be able to report those things to us so that we can investigate those things. And to my knowledge, we haven't investigated any of those groups in Nevada County.
So I'm interested in your thought here that, again, I'm going back to just a statement just 2 days ago from former President Trump, who felt that there's enemy from within on election day, that this radical left lunatics, according to him, quote unquote. And he says, I think it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, the National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can make that happen. So this idea, are you in touch with the National Guard in this community?
Yeah, part of asking for that mutual aid from the National Guard or the military does have to come through my office. Mm-hmm. That is part of our constitution here in California. And yes, we have conversations to make sure that we're prepared for anything, whether it's any type of violence that happens, whether it's an election, whether it's any type of outpouring of someone that chooses to bring violence to a community. It happens with national disasters. We bring in the National Guard occasionally. It's just a manpower thing. But as far as bringing in the military, that again, anybody can say anything they want.
Right.
Right? And unfortunately, words matter, and words cause fear. In Nevada County, I can tell you, we have the conversations because we have the relationships built with the National Guard. But again,
So it's your authority to be able to ask, is it asking the governor or just going directly to the National Guard?
It would be a conversation with the governor's office. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, each law enforcement agency, whether it's Nevada County or whether it's Sacramento County or Los Angeles County, at some point, if we have a major incident, we're going to run out of resources. So that is the mutual aid system in California. Just like there is with disaster, if I run out of resources locally, I call my state association of California Office of Emergency Services and I say, I need bodies. Whether it's law enforcement bodies, whether it's search and rescue bodies, our system is really planned for the request for mutual aid. We very much understand that just because of where we are in the state of California, we ask for mutual aid quite a bit during the winter, during search and rescue events.
So are your fellow sheriffs around the state discussing election interference or problems after it? Is that a topic that comes up, or are we just sort of scared up here in Nevada County?
No, I think everybody's talking about it. It doesn't matter where you live. I think everybody's talking about it. I can assure you that of the sheriffs that I spoke with and at our meeting this last couple of days, there wasn't anybody that said that they had an actual threat where they were providing any type of investigation towards. Everybody's trying to just be prepared and trying to ensure our community members that we are prepared if something does happen. We're a phone call away. Again, our first response is going to try to make a scene safe, and then we determine kind of whose jurisdiction it is. And we do that every single day on any call for service. The agencies that work in Nevada County are incredible as far as our partnerships on ensuring that at any given time, incidents happen all the time, and you don't really care who shows up. You just need assistance, and then we determine jurisdiction afterwards.
Great. So we put you on the spot enough. Let's go back to your friend over here. So Natalie, tell us about how many ballot types do you have this time? I mean, it's always an amazing number. So you've had to print specific ballot types for different jurisdictions that have a road association here and have a NID director over there. How many ballot types are there this year in Nevada County?
You know, it's funny, I meant to get the exact number for you, and then I got distracted at work, and I did not get the exact number for you, but it's going to be somewhere around like 28 or 29.
So 29 different types of ballots are going out.
Yeah, something like that.
And tell me, Natalie, you also had an open house for sort of running the ballot counting machine recently. How did the public show up to be able to see it in action?
Well, some people showed up. I mean, you can still come and see how it works. And I mean, we've got it fired up now because there are people turning in their ballots. So yeah, it's any time. Normally, and I mean, we are not alone in this. Our other ROVs kind of complain about this too. We invite the public all the time, and we have like maybe a couple of people show up. So we're always eager to have visitors.
So I know Shasta County wanted to be able to count their ballots by hand, and that was dealt with on the state level. That said no. But now we have in Georgia, and I know you're on nationwide election official events and committees. I mean, how impossible is it to count Georgia's ballots by hand, even though that's what the election board in Georgia has recently promoted?
That decision, I believe, was
Was
struck
just-
down
correct.
by a judge for this election. But I want to make an important distinction between
Sure.
what Shasta was proposing and what the Georgia Elections Board was proposing. So in Shasta, their proposal was to do a hand tally of every contest on the ballot. In Georgia, my understanding is they want to count the number of ballots in the precincts. So that the difference is doing a hand tally of the results versus counting pieces of paper. So, I obviously don't serve in the state of Georgia, but, my understanding is that, the concern was more rooted in sort of last minute changes to the election rules. I know several people who administer elections in Georgia. I think the consensus is we'll figure it out if we have to do it. But what other sort of last minute changes are we going to have to deal with here? And it was sort of confusing to me. Sort of professionally to have a requirement of 3 people doing this after a 13, 14-hour day on election night. I don't know if you've ever served in a voting location, but you don't want to be there for hours after the polls close if you don't have to be. So yes, I think that the longer you work and the more pieces of paper that you deal with, the more exhausted that you get. One of the things that I hear a lot is, well, they can sort of hand count everything in France the night of, and I'm like, okay, well, they don't have vote by mail there. Vote by mail has a whole different process that requires time. They don't have like 30 or more contests on a ballot. They got 1. So yes, I think that they have a system that clearly works in that country. That just for all the good we do, I don't think it can be replicated here in America, even though we've got sort of fewer parties than many democracies around the world. We have the most complex elections anywhere. Part of the reason is we've got a hyper-federalized system where the states can pick all of their rules as long as they don't break federal laws. And here in California, all 58 counties can do something slightly different. So, it's a sort of complex, sort of world we live in. And the good thing is, and one of the things that gives me hope is, even though we're all sort of doing different things here and there, we all share the same values, that we want voters to vote, that we want this process to be free and fair, we want it to be transparent, we want the whole system to have integrity, and we want to follow the law. So, agree or disagree with whatever's happening in Georgia, Arizona, or wherever, we all have the same goal of service.
So Natalie, you're all, knowing that you have a nationwide contact, it's got to be fairly concerning of the 7 contested states and, what happened in Maricopa County 4 years ago and a number of places like that. Do you know what security measures have been put into place in some of these in terms of that they learned something from 2020 that they're employing now from clerk recorders in those more highly contested states?
Well, I don't know that I could speak to every state's process, but, I know that, there are some counties who have reacted based on what has happened in the past. And, I think that, as a person who loves to be a public servant, it is kind of sad to learn that some places have erected, huge gates for people to, sort of have clearance to walk into. I am a big believer that government should be open and welcoming and not this fortress that, people have to go through layers and layers in order to get to. Unfortunately, sort of understand that they live in a different reality than we do over here. But again, they all want the same thing. They just want people to vote. It doesn't matter what party, just please vote. And, hopefully it is easy for people. I think the main concern is, will these people who are just doing their job be able to do their job? And I mean, I think that they're all looking forward to a smooth election, just like we are. The thing that will be tough, I think, is what happens after the election and what happens after the results become final.
Yes. And so you also have that Nevada County votes are going to be counted in a more rapid manner this election.
I hope so.
So you've put some things in place that's going to allow for more rapid voting.
Yeah, sure.
results.
We have a mail sorting machine. We used to, so when we sort of organize our ballot room, we organize the ballots by precinct because it helps us with the post-election audit. So we used to sort all of those precincts manually for 75,000 registered voters. Now this machine helps us do it, which is far faster and far more efficient. It helps us do the signature verification. It helps us open up the envelopes once those signatures are verified, and it is a lot faster. But I will say that there is a law that was passed for this election that will require us to certify 28 days after the election. So that is December 3rd. We are expecting to be finished with our processes before Thanksgiving, but we'll have to certify on December 3rd.
What keeps you up at night regarding this election?
I think that we have prepared really well for this election, and I think one of the silver linings from the 2020 election cycle is that we now have a better idea of what to expect. But what keeps me up at night are the things that I cannot control at all. And
what are those?
I mean, I can't control how people behave out in the world. I can't control what they say on social media. I can't control what politicians say about any part of the election. And it kind of gives me a little bit of heartburn because we do have to deal with all of those things. We get questions from the public about in general how that affects our operation, and we have to tell them things like, well, we understand, but we run elections differently here in California, or we haven't had those same issues that they've had in pick a jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Sheriff, what keeps you up at night regarding this election?
Okay, with this election, nice job.
No.
Putting it right in there.
Right there.
Right there. Again, it goes back to just an everyday, what keeps me awake at night. Do I have the right staff? Do I have trained staff? Have I given them the resources and the equipment that they need to be able to be successful in their jobs? The fear and the anxiety that you feel every day during this election, it's about the unknown. It's the what if, right? And I've been doing this job for 34 years. And in law enforcement, we're always talking about the what if. It's kind of how you marinate in it. And it does create anxiety in staff and officers that are out there. So, it can be toxic, right? So I say, control what you can control. This is what I tell my staff every day. Be prepared, right? Understand your authority as a law enforcement officer in your community. Worry about what you can control, what other people are saying, whatever differences people have. At the end of the day, we truly all want the same thing. We want to be safe in our communities. Again, politics aside, this is a pretty amazing community, and everybody has a choice where they live. I choose to live in this community. It's the honor of my lifetime to be the sheriff here. I have amazing staff that show up every single day in service, and what keeps me awake is wanting to make sure that I've provided them everything that they need in order to make sure that this community stays safe.
Okay. So let's talk about. I know, you look at the ACLU's reports and the Southern Poverty Law Center reports that California is really a hotbed of a lot of hate crimes in comparison to the rest of the nation. We have a lot, even though we think of ourselves sort of as this liberal bastion. There's a lot of hate crimes, and I know that there's also reports at least of a Proud Boys organization out of Placerville. Are you kept aware of what's going? You may get the tips from FBI, but are you kept aware of hate crimes around the state? And are there task forces dealing with how to deal with these hate crimes? Because we see so much anti-Semitism and so many other hate that's out there these days that's troubling to me, at least as a citizen, and I'm sure troubling to you as a sheriff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it goes back to that relationship that we build across state or county lines. And yes, we have discussions with El Dorado Sheriff Jeff Lykoff. I've had discussions with Wendell Anderson, the sheriff of Yuba County. And there are groups in their jurisdictions that they've had hate crime reported. There has been no specific hate crimes in Nevada County that we've sent to our district attorney for prosecution that I'm aware of, at least since I've been the sheriff. Again, there are hate crime incidences that happen. We investigate them. We send them to our district attorney. There is a very specific category for that, for an element of a crime. And my staff are all here, and they can correct me. But I look at it and I say, we can take those reports. We've had incidences. Of course, we've had incidences, and then we've sent them to our district attorney. I don't believe that we've had anything prosecuted very specifically as a hate crime, at least within the last several years. That doesn't mean that it's not out there, and that's at the crux of everything. A lot of crime that we see in Nevada County is reported crime. What has been reported, where we've actually taken a crime report and send it to our district attorney. There's crime that happens every single day that never gets reported, out of fear, out of keeping it within the family, all those different things. So, my staff are prepared and trained in responding to hate crime. That is a part of the minimum standards for peace officers all over in California, is to have the ability to understand the differences between just a crime, or if it is affiliated with, and the reason that it was, you victimized someone was because of whether it's a race, gender, sexual identity, all those different things. But again, in Nevada County, we haven't seen a lot of that stuff.
Okay. Now, I know we've had a lot of rallies. We've had more rallies recently than I can remember in this county. And so most of them are occurring in Grass Valley's jurisdiction, but are police monitoring those in terms of safety issues and all for those people out there that are protesting or protesting for or against or whatever they're doing?
Yeah, and again, that's that freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Freedom to congregate, freedom to be with like-minded people and discuss your perspectives and have people honk while you drive by, different things like that. Definitely that happens all over, not just in larger jurisdictions. It's definitely happened here in Nevada County. Again, part of it is sometimes your presence actually escalates incidences. So across the country, what we've seen in some of the best practices is not to be present. Let people have their freedom of speech, and then kind of monitor more on a monitor end. I think in the city of Grass Valley, we have had a couple of instances where crime was reported at the rallies, whether it was a passerby or whether it was something that happened within the rally, and those are investigated and sent, again, to our district attorney. We've had a couple of cases where I think people were convicted of crimes associated during that. But again, it's recognizing we want to ensure safety for everyone, even the folks that are protesting, even if they're protesting about our services, and recognizing that people do have the ability to say what they want to say. It's when their actions turn into a criminal act of either a very specific threat or an act of violence.
Great. So we're going to open it up to questions here in a couple minutes. Just to let you know, you're welcome to. We'd like your questions to not be actually specific to your one problem, but more in a general nature to be able to answer that the sheriff and clerk recorder can tell you. So, Sheriff, let's talk about your concerns of how are you going to deal with the potential. I mean, I realize that you've told me that you're well prepared and everything else, but we've got some potential things that could happen in this community or any other community. And so what does that look like when there's a threat or there's violence? How do you respond? Sorry, it's a broad question, but how does that a response occur to ensure this public, to tell them that we got your back?
Yeah, just as if any report of any type of crime happens, whether it's a domestic violence incident, we've seen recently, we respond. The first responding officers on every single call determine if they have enough resources by themselves. Their next step immediately is asking for assistance. We're going to use all of the staff that we have in our jurisdiction, and since one of the really great things about Nevada County is that all of our law enforcement agencies are on the same radio. So we don't have to call the city of Nevada City and ask for help when we're at the Root Center. I don't have to call Grass Valley. We're all on the same radio, and we're all listening to each other's calls. So we have a lot of calls where you're going to see a bunch of different officers from different agencies show up and look at what do we need to do right now to make this scene safe. They do that on every single call, every single day, and they're very good at it. They're the incident commander for their call. If they need more resources, they're going to call in other resources. Other agencies are going to show up. The next level of supervisor that shows up is going to be the incident commander. So every time someone with higher rank shows up, they're going to be the incident commander, and we do that because of their experience. They've been working in our agencies for multiple years. They've responded to multiple issues, whether it's a mass violent issue, whether it's a search and rescue call, whether it's a barricaded subject that's just shot someone. All of those things happen, unfortunately, in our communities. So the next level of officer shows up, they're going to be the incident commander, and they're going to say the same thing to themselves. Can I handle this call with the resources that I have? They're going to notify our top command level staff so that I'm aware, so that our undersheriff's aware, so that we can start talking and making sure that we have the right information out to our media, so that we can ensure that there's maybe stay away from certain areas so that people don't unwillingly enter into an issue that we could probably try to prevent.
And have your officers been notified about concerns that you have, or anyone about specifically election issues that they're more attuned to it here over the next month or so?
Absolutely, just because we are in election cycle, so they know where the ballot box locations are, they know where the polling places are, and we have those conversations so that if something happens in any of those locations, we're all on heightened awareness for those incidences. And then again, once we determine we don't have enough resources, we're going to call for mutual aid resources. We make one phone call to Placer County. They have a heck of a lot more resources than we do, especially if we're in the southern part of our county. Just a normal call for service in the south part of our county, a lot of times the Placer County folks will come up and help us out. So it's knowing that we already work within that arena of mutual aid, and then we start slowing it down. We're going to try to make that scene as safe as we can, as soon as we can, with the staff that we have, and then we're going to consistently ask for more staff, depending on, can we get this done within the day? Sometimes we go in multiple operational cycles for incidences, and what are we bringing in for the next day, and what do we have planned out for logistics? We work within the incident command structure for that reason, just like fire does. Just on any call for service starts in that very low level, and then it could be something as large as say an election issue with lots of violence. We're going to use the staff that we can. our staff are going to run towards danger, because that's what we do. That's the when we take that oath, we're going to try to make the scenes as safe as we can, and work from there.
Okay, let's hear from some of you. Yes, my dear, why don't you stand up, and I'll repeat the question so
Okay, I'm Mary Ann Volsey from the union.
Yes.
Last week, there was a cyber attack on our local school districts, and they were actually held at ransom. I wonder what would be done if something like that happened in your system. Do you rely on internet?
So, talk to us about cyber attacks on the election.
I think we have a really good relationship with our county IT team, and our servers are actually separated from the county. They're sort of isolated. The only thing that we really need the internet for, aside from sort of communicating information, for your registration and your voting history, we do have a secure connection to the state's registration database. It's called VoteCal. And there are a lot of sort of cybersecurity measures that we take in order to keep that connection secure. We also are in constant contact with the Office of Cybersecurity at the Secretary of State's office. We are members of the MS and EI ISACs. Those are the information and analysis sharing centers that are run by the Center for Internet Security. They have compacts with all 50 states, and most counties that I know about are members of the MS and EI ISACs. We get information from them constantly about any potential threats that we need to sort of address. So there are a lot of processes in place. All of our staff, including me, have cybersecurity training quarterly. And I mean, I get reminders when my training is due like 100 days out. I'm like, can you remind me maybe 15 days out? Our IT team is sort of very diligent about making sure not only that we take the training, but that I, as the manager, understand how people did in that training. So I think that our IT team is, they are partially paid to be very, very paranoid about things like ransomware, and I have great confidence in what we're doing right now in Nevada County to make sure that that does not happen.
Great. Sheriff?
Yeah, same county IT handles all of the information technology systems at the sheriff's office. We've had instances where cyber attacks have hit some of our local agencies, City of Grass Valley and I think the town of Truckee. And we listened to them on how they stood their systems back up, because I think that is also an issue. We try to be on that cutting edge with technology, and then you recognize real quickly you always need your backup systems in case you don't have it, and ensuring that we can still take crime reports and send reports to the district attorney. But it definitely. We have the cybersecurity training that we get notified of, and just ensuring that all of the staff know that that's typically how it comes in, right? Is through a staff member clicking on something that they shouldn't be, and then having something come in.
Other questions? Yes, back up there. Yes, sir.
Hi, Chief Porter, thank you for the forum. Question for Natalie. In 2020, there were all these lawsuits filed after the election claiming fraud and so forth. I think there are already lawsuits filed this term on the same theme, more to come probably. Have you done things differently for this cycle to prepare for the allegations of fraud, and how has that affected your job? Has it made your job more difficult?
Well, I don't know. So, as far as our preparation, we are doing everything by the book, as we have in every other election. And I think, the best way to, sort of protect yourself from a lawsuit, I mean, people might sue anyway, But the best thing that you can do is follow the law. And we make sure to follow the law, obviously, and are referring to the law all of the time in case we are unsure. Though I have an elections code book on my desk, as all my staff do. It's like that thick in small print. And we are constantly, making sure that we understand what it is that we're doing. There are a lot of changes to the law every year. I think that, as far as changes go, I think it's really important for all elections offices, including ours, to show our work as much as we can. So we are trying to, sort of put more information on our website and, make sure to remind people you can come in and observe. And, under the California Voter Bill of Rights, you have the right to ask questions and get answers to those questions. So, I think that, not really different, but, we're trying to, to the extent that we can, put more and more information out there so you can educate yourself and ask us questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, my name is Julie Miller. First of all, thank you all so much. We so appreciate this. Two questions, and maybe just answer the one that you feel is most important. Should we be reporting when someone vandalizes a sign on someone's lawn? Is that something that should be reported? And then do you encourage us, the second question is to stay home, after the election?
Well, I'd say definitely report any vandalism, sign theft. I think we just took one last night. The guys are shaking their heads, so we do an end of watch after every shift to do the highlights, and I get the highlights so that they let me know what's going on. But we did have a political sign theft just recently. Definitely report those things. Doesn't necessarily mean we'll be able to prove who did it, but it does give us kind of, it gives us an idea of the data on what's happening in our county when it is reported. And as far as staying home, I wouldn't recommend anybody stay home because I don't have any real credible threats where I'd say that I would warrant that. I can tell you when to evacuate your home, and I can tell you when to shelter in place, right? We have no credible threats where I would tell anybody to alter anything in your life other than vote. Hopefully everyone votes, and we can figure out what happens at the end of the election.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Then we'll try to get you all in here.
Steve Hurley, I just have a question. If you have to call for outside resources and the state police and the National Guard are under the control of the governor, at what point does the chain of command switch to where the governor is no longer in charge of those resources?
I'm still going to be in charge of our county and what happens within our county. Sometimes the jurisdiction of the investigation on the crime does switch over to a federal investigative because it's going to be potentially tried in a U.S. Federal court instead of the local district attorney's office. But as far as the challenges of something that major, I've never lived through it, so we'll be figuring it out as we go. But definitely, as the sheriff, I am the highest level law enforcement in the county under the Constitution. So a lot of that would depend on the conversations that I would have with the governor's office.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for a very informative discussion. I'm Rick Partridge. Back to a point Natalie made early on. Thanks to mail-in voting, I haven't been in a poll in maybe 20 years. What does it look like inside now for these observers who show up and their role in terms of, if I were voting and someone sees me do something that they don't think is right, what happens? Do they tackle me? Do they yell for 911? Do you have regulations that tell you what?
Did everyone hear the question? So the question essentially is, if you go into a polling booth today, what does it look like when these observers are there, and what role do they have in terms of watching what's taking place in a polling booth?
Well, their job is not to tackle anyone. No, by definition, observers observe. They can take notes. They cannot look over your shoulder and see how you're voting. They cannot challenge you at the voting location. So, when you walk into a polling place, there is an election table where you check in, you give the person your name and your residential address, and, we get to check your voting history and make sure that, you can vote in person. So the election observer looks at election conduct. They don't jump in and be an election worker, and if they see something that they think is not right, they can report it to our office, but they cannot intervene with what the voter is doing. I mean, that is the election worker's job to, sort of remind the voter, say if, and this is very common, if you have a passive form of electioneering, like a political button with, the name of a candidate who appears on the ballot, then it's the election worker's job to say, hey, I noticed that you have a button, can you please remove it or cover it up while you're here? And they'll, sort of direct them to the literature on electioneering. I mean, I think that happens pretty often, but it's never the observer's job to be like, they're breaking the law and what are you going to do about it? They just are there to take notes, answer questions, stuff like that.
Yes, sir.
David Franco, do we have a self-auditing process in the counting cycle that happens?
Is there an auditing process within the elections office?
Yeah, absolutely. So before every election, we will do something called logic and accuracy testing on all of the voting equipment to make sure that, when people, for example, use the touch screens, that it's going to make the selection that the voter intends. That, when we put a test ballot through there, that, it'll tabulate the way that we expect it to. We have security seals on all of the sort of sensitive parts of the election system, like the voting equipment, like, the boxes where we keep ballots, sort of stuff like that. There are security seals that we have a rigorous chain of custody and documentation to make sure that nothing has been tampered with. And after the election, we have something called the elections canvas. And the canvas allows us to do a lot of things. One, we'll continue to count ballots that we can lawfully count. And we do a 1% manual tally where we'll take batches of what has been counted by the voting equipment, not only with the vote by mail that we count centrally, but also with the ballots that are counted inside of the precincts. And we'll make sure that what we have recorded, it matches the hand tally that our staff are doing. We will also look at all of the paperwork that we receive back from the voting locations to make sure that what they reported as, what they sort of did and what they brought back to us is actually what was brought back to us. And all of this is public. So, if you want to come to the elections canvas, and just a note, when I first started, I'm like, ooh, it's the canvas. I'm part of the canvas. And about 2 days in, I'm like, wow, this is really long. So, many people just come to Canvas for a day. You can come to all of the days if you wanted to, but you might want to, do things like live your life. But yeah, we have all of that documented, and our Canvas teams, when we finish up, we have a report that shows, basically what we did, and, you're free to view those as well.
We're going to go to 2 questions. Yes, sir. 2 more.
Alan Greenbaum. At the end of the first day of voting in the state of Georgia, they reported the record numbers had turned out and so on. Well, that's Georgia. They have a specific history. It's newsworthy. I'm just curious at this point with the mail-in ballots and so on, do you have a sense of how our turnout in Nevada County is compared to past elections?
I would say that we've got a pretty good turnout so far. It has been the case in a lot of elections that people are taking a long time to decide, and then they'll dump all the ballots on us on election day and then be like, why aren't you finished yet? Well, for this election, we are getting quite a few people, a noticeable amount of people who are turning in their ballots early, which makes us really happy because we've been planning this event for like a year or more. It's really sad when it's still quiet. So we've got, I would say probably 7,000 ballots in our office right now. And I expect a lot more. We're asking our pickup teams to pick up more often. So I think early voting is going to be pretty robust here as well.
Last question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Laura Palmer. I see this as being video recorded. I'm also audio recording it because I have friends who can't attend. Number one, I'm a little disappointed that the forum wasn't in the evening or a weekend when there could be more working citizens that could attend. Second, is this going to be able to be uploaded on YouTube, or can someone else view it?
Judy, why don't you answer that lovely question?
You can find all of our forums on the Sierra College website, www.sierracollege.edu. I think it's /Nevada County. And it'll list on that forums and all the ones that we've had.
So we want to say thank you very, very much for coming here today. Oh, hello. Yes, Supervisor.
I'm sorry. I just have one really quick question for Natalie. I've seen a lot of chatter on social media about ballots going out to people who passed away and that there's an opportunity for fraud there. Can you explain how somebody can remove their loved one from the voting rolls? Because I know it's not just a phone call saying, hey, my husband died. I know Greg D has explained it at a meeting I was at a few years ago, but I think it's really important for people to understand.
So fraudulent of dead voters, then how you're dealing with the death. Okay, that will end it on a death note.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So we get, as the county recorder, we get sort of records from the Department of Public Health every month, but sometimes, we don't get that notification before we send out a mailing list to a vendor to mail out your ballot, for example. So, I think we do have, sort of a ton of data from public health that we do get that sort of shows us who is no longer with us, and we have to send out notifications. But I would say that if you find yourself in that situation where we did not get that notification and you got that, please bring it to us. Let us know. We'll have you fill out a simple form that lets us know that we need to cancel this voter, and we're happy to do that.
Okay. Hey, next month we've got NID coming. And so I hope you'll come. You'll be getting a notice if you filled out the form here. And how about a lovely round of applause for our public servants? Thank you very much for attending. Appreciate it. We'll see you next month talking about water. Great, as always.